Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio's Call to Conscience, a celebration and education of Black History Month. I'm Shantae Young, and all month long in February, we will be showcasing musical performances, dance exhibitions, race and justice discussions, and workshops. Every Friday, we host a Friday Family Black Film Night showcasing films by Black filmmakers. We'll bring you Black celebrations from around the world, including Africa, Europe, France, and British Columbia, Canada. This comprehensive celebration, which will also explore the Hartsfield Slave Quilt Collection, the 100-year anniversary of the destruction of Black Wall Street, and interviews with Seattle Black history makers, is all powered by and thanks to Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. Tonight, our guest is Bernie Foster, co-founder and publisher of the Skanner, a Portland-based weekly newspaper focused on issues affecting African Americans and underserved communities in the Pacific Northwest. Mr. Foster, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm extremely honored to have you here.
Thank you, Shantae, and I'm really proud and happy to be here, and hopefully being able to share my little views in terms of what we've worked on the Pacific Northwest, and particularly as it pertains to Black history, because that's a subject that we've been talking about for the last 50 years. Nothing changed other than the fact we made progress and then we lost a few progress. But I like to think we made more progress than we've lost.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I can't wait to have this discussion with you. You have really been a part of the industry that I've always imagined I would be a part of. So I'm excited to be talking to someone who's done some great things for the community. But, before we kick it off, before we started, you said you had something to say about the Super Bowl last night. And for those of you guys who watched, we all know the Buccaneers took the win. Tom Brady got another ring. So what'd you think about the game last night?
Well, first of all, let me just say I was at home, and a friend of mine called me from back east and said, "Bernie, we know that you're a Super Bowl fan, and we also know that you're a Seahawks fan." I absolutely said, "But since neither Seahawks are not playing, so who's your team you're picking?" I said, "Well, I guess I'm picking that young boy, that for the Kansas City, Mahomes." So he said, "Well, Bernie, he's been Tom Brady has been vilified. They say he's too old. He's he can't play anymore, and they're a 34-pound favorite for the Kansas City." So he said, "Bernie, maybe Tom has something to prove." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, maybe that motivated him because he's an old guy. So I guess he may go out and show this young buck, how to play this game." So evidently, that's what he did, and it was. So all the young bucks, you better listen to some of these old guys like me.
Right.
We got something to prove.
I could not agree with you more. It was such an amazing game to watch because yes, everyone has been talking a lot about Tom Brady being past his prime, that he needs to retire. And Tom Brady said, "No, I'm going to show you guys I can get another ring, and I'm going to teach Patrick Mahomes a couple things."
I guess he did.
I thought that was really funny. Yes, Tom Brady couldn't go out like that.
That's what he did.
Oh, to switch gears a little bit and get it back to, a topic at hand, I actually wanted to know what Black History Month means to you, and what are some ways that you like to celebrate?
Well, Black history means a lot to me. And you said something earlier when you said you were thinking about coming in this game. And I'm glad to see people like you coming in this game. Now, so once I started in the 60s and what it is now, it's a totally different ball game. And by the way, I got my start in Seattle,
Oh,
like many of us. Okay, and one of the papers that really gave me a lot to learn was the Fax newspaper up there. I did my intern up there for about 8 years before I started that. But what I really learned about a newspaper, I got it at the Seattle Times by
wow.
a guy by the name of Russ Young. He was the advertising director. Now, I don't know if you are old enough to understand what an advertising director is, but this guy ran the whole shebang. And I remember he took me into a meeting, and everybody was probably 25 or 30 years my age. But when this guy spoke with the publisher, the co-publisher, when this guy said something in that room with 30 or 40 people, everybody listened.
Mm,
And he told me at the time, I'm going to show you what a newspaper is about. Russ Young was the man. When he said something, everybody listened because this guy was he was the financial arm of the business, and newspaper is a business. So
absolutely.
that's when I really learned what it was all about. So when we pardon me. So when we first came and opened this paper up, it was probably 10 years after the Kerner report. The Kerner report at that time in the 60s was the fact that they were saying there was not enough Black folks in the newsroom. That's what that was all about. And so they were trying to hire me to become a writer. But first of all, I wasn't a very good writer, okay? But by that time, I had learned what the newspaper was about, and I was a good advertising director. So when me and my wife opened this paper up, they wanted me to run it from the news contents, and that was not what I was about. So
Okay.
I learned that if I made enough revenue, I could hire the journalists. And by the way, good journalism is what newspapers is all about. Good journalism makes it easier to sell it. Period.
Yeah.
All those news releases don't do it. Good journalism is the cause of what people why people want to pick up that paper. And I remember a story we did, the lady by the name of Lisa Lovin. Um, Lisa Lovin did a piece called Raising the Roof. Raising the Roof. And it was all about an older guy that had a roof on his house. And normally they put a lien on your house. So
Hmm.
he paid it all off and everything, and then filed the necessary papers to get the lien off, to let it go. So about 3 years went by, and so these boys found out what's the value of that house, and tried to put it. They were going to put it on auction. I was traveling at the time, and I remember real thoroughly. And I was out of town. She went, a good reporter that knew the community. She went and found one of the biggest contractors in the neighborhood. He knew the neighborhood. He knew the paper. He called his law firm up, put his lawyers on there. They were going to do it pro bono.
Okay.
And what's happening during that time, they stopped the sale, saved the man's house, and and then they found out that he had a big old bond. The law firm found he had a big old bond on his business. So what they did, they sued his bond and got paid, but saved the man's house. And the man came by about a month later and brought Lisa a nice bouquet of flowers. I'll never forget
Wow.
it. Mm-hmm. Raising the roof. And by the way, this people won a national award for that story. So
That's amazing.
that's the power of when you do stuff right and you know it's right. What I liked about him, they did it pro bono and found that he had this big old bond, so they got paid too. Nothing wrong with that. I was happy they got paid. But it taught
Right.
that old guy, taught that young man a lesson. And also, I think it taught that contractor a lesson. Just don't mess with people simply because you want his house and then
Right.
paid you. So that was probably one of our biggest stories that I was privileged to.
I think that's amazing. It's a beautiful story, and it's really nice to see journalism affecting change in a positive
Yeah.
way, you know.
Mhm.
I think that in recent years, you know, media is getting a lot of flack for, you know,
Yeah.
misinformation and being biased, but that's just amazing. And I think that that's really what it's all about. It's and reading your mission, that seems like what the scanner is all about, is
Yes,
really
it is.
affecting positive change.
And you know, sometimes I tell people all the time, sometimes newspapers are written, but you need them. You may not always like it, but it is about change. And it's up to you whether you do anything about it. Sometimes I kind of equate it to, it's like the weatherman. We tell you that there's some clouds and overcast. It's up to you to put on the raincoat. Now, we told you that, that, that this may happen. It's up to you to do something about it.
Right. I love that analogy. That's great. I might have to use that.
Well, well, that's what we do. And what you're doing right now is telling people, and you said something I think is kind of important. You know, we talk about Black history, and I just kind of just want to think about the fact that you young people are the ones that paving the way for all this stuff that's happening. And Black folks have been paving the way in America for the last 400 years. We are the group that go out, make the changes, and then sometimes many of the other group come in and shave a little piece off, of it, and then we're the last to ever get involved or reap some of that benefit.
Mm,
One of the things I always say, you've been hearing this term, the first this, the first that. Well, sometimes first don't mean anything, because sometimes these first people that you get in there have do not have your best interests. And let me give you an example of that.
okay.
Uh, um, in Louisville, Kentucky, that
Mhm.
attorney general
Yes.
and Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend were laying at home, the right to be safe in their own home.
Right.
Killed that lady, the brother, for the attorney general did not give all the grand jury the information, you know, and
Right.
did not give them all the information. So simply did not give, and so therefore they acquitted him. Then the police officer turned around and sued the brother for breaking in the house. Now, simply just because this guy was Black, he did not have our best interest.
Right.
All he was trying to do is please these police departments where he could get where he could climb the ladder. So
Mhm.
be careful about all Black folks. Don't mean all Black folks is in our best interest.
That is so true. I'd never been so disheartened in a situation as I was with that. I was born in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is about
Okay,
30 minutes
okay.
away from Louisville. A lot of my family lives in Louisville. So I was kind of really moved by all of that in a different
Mhm.
way. And it was one of those situations where I was hoping they'd do right and they just didn't. And Daniel Cameron should really he should really be ashamed of himself, to be honest.
Well,
Um,
well, well, well. You're right. Shame sometimes, but people got to remember this person, and those are the and he'll pop up somewhere
mhm,
if he probably still there. I don't know, but yeah, that's part of what we do, and sometimes why we have to challenging
absolutely,
people to shape a better future. That's our mission statement, and
absolutely.
we have to just keep pushing and striving. Um, so
I wanted to talk to you, actually a little bit more about your upbringing, and then kind of talk more about the mission of the scanner as well. But you are native to St. Louis, Illinois, and I wanted to know what it was like growing up there, and how your experiences shaped and helped to guide you to where you are now. Was there anyone who really inspired you to move? Did you see what life was like, and you're like, I'd like to move? What were your experiences like there?
well, it was a learning experience, and I didn't really have a clue, but I knew that there was there was a better opportunity somewhere else. And I guess very fortunately, my father was in the Air Force, so I ended up going to the Air Force and moved in the Pacific, and I ended up in the Pacific Northwest. Probably was the greatest move I ever done, and then coming to Portland. So it's been a wonderful journey. But you said what made me leave was poverty, poverty, and wasn't any opportunity. I tell my kids all the time, if you're sitting around here, you need to improve yourself. That means, well, all my friends are here. Well, sometimes you have to leave that to the side. You'll make more friends. The friends are not your whole life. And then when you get to my age, and I'm pretty close to 80, you get to my age, you can count them, all your friends on one hand. Okay?
Yeah.
So get out of that nonsense.
Yeah.
Get out of that nonsense. You will make good friends. You will make friends and probably get better friends as you move on. I got friends from all over the country. And one of them called me just about that Tom Brady story, because he already harassed me about the Seahawks, and he gave me that lesson about somebody got a
Something to prove.
motivation. That's right. So you will make good friends. And the good part about it, this paper have allowed me to be able to travel, to observe third wheel election, and being able to see things, my experience in service, being a Vietnam veteran, that taught me, and I've saw coups in election. I've saw coups in Vietnam. So what we saw on January the 6th was nothing but a coup. That's exactly what it was. And I think we need to understand the fact that the vice president was there, the new incoming elected vice president was there, the speaker of the house was there. So you took down those three powers, and you got one person left, control the whole country, the whole world, never be put out of power again.
Right.
So we better be very careful of the fragile democracy. And there's nothing, and I was talking to a friend, there's nothing in the Constitution says that Black folks should be free. It's only a proclamation. Donald Trump signed 20 of them. President Biden just signed about 40 of them. And if you ever read one of the Constitution, it says, by the power invested in me, the use of the military, the Air Force, I proclaim all Black folk free. By the power invested in me. I'm gonna say that again. So we on a fragile slope here, Black folks. So be cognizant of it that they can't do that. Well, think about it. That's all I want to tell you. And I'm back to this raincoat thing about we tell you there's some clouds. You better put on the raincoat. So
Yeah.
And by the way, I just want to say, since we're talking about that, we have, I said earlier, we have been a real champion of trailblazers, a real champion of trailblazers. Now, it seems to me that if we put President Biden in, now we need to be compensated. We need to be compensated for the work that we built this country, from the cotton gin to Sears and Roebuck. And can anybody else tell me what happened to Mr. Roebuck? I hope he got compensated, but you only see Sears on it right now. What happened to blood plasma? These stop signs that you see every year. Did their brother get compensated for that? I don't think so. By the way, the lottery. You're too young to remember this, but you got some artists out there that they should call that the lottery. The numbers started in Albany, New York. That's who took the first lottery away. And by the way, Black folks paid the lottery 4 times to 5 times disproportionately than white folks. And if you ever saw that movie, Lawrence Fishburne and Della Reese, that's a true story. They talk about the gaming industry, so it's over. Your parents would probably, if they from back there, Kentucky, they can tell you about the lottery. They can tell you about that. And a lot of it was same about the same foundation. It was based on funding schools, uh, and 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 the early lottery was funded all that on no black community. It gave loans. So when they took that lottery away, they didn't even give them a franchise. They took, and it was huge amounts of revenue that was spent. Oregon and Washington, black folk, we got a small number, but we paid disproportionately. And I've done the numbers on them. I've got the numbers up on my website. So you need to look at that. And another issue I want to just talk about, there was an article we did on a guy by the name of George Washington. George Washington, and now not to confuse with the president. George Washington is a black guy, black man that found Centralia. You know what Centralia? Mm-hmm.
In Washington?
Centralia, Washington. Look on my website. That guy name is George Washington, and go up in that search bar on the right-hand side and click George Washington. And but you got to chip in Centralia Washington, founder. This guy was a slave. Came to Oregon first, from Virginia. From Virginia, came out here when they first opened the states up. Down here, they had Salmon, Benson, and those boys that built Portland, and they didn't have no room for no small young black man, because he was his stepfather was white. They adopted him, and they went up north and stopped in Centralia, and that's why him and his wife opened up Centralia, the founder. I interviewed people up there, and for those out there that's coming through Oregon, halfway between Portland and Seattle, so stop in Centralia. There's the bronze statue of him on Main Street. There's the school named after him. The whole town is named after him. And he founded that town simply because the Northern Pacific Railroad was coming through at the time. Okay. And so he moved up. His father was white, so he was able to buy land. And he opened the land. His wife named the streets. And you go through there, stop there, and you see a picture of him and his dog on the main street, sitting on the bench. And so I want people to click on that website, and that's good history.
I'm gonna check that out.
And then when you go further north, Tumwater, another black man found Tumwater.
No way.
That's right. So that what we talking about history. So right. I just think those are just fabulous, just out in the Pacific North for what we did out here.
Right. So we have a few more minutes, and I wanted to ask you a question kind of about today and, the past. So the Skanner's been around for about 46 years now.
About 50 years next year.
Okay. So just under 50 years. Your mission is challenging people to shape a better future now. After everything that's happened this past year alone, what do you think is important for activists and advocates to keep in mind when they're trying to move that needle forward on civil rights issues?
Okay, that's another good question. Again, I'm gonna have to refer to my website. It's a story up there, and I want them upper right hand corner. Click on Maxine Fitzpatrick. Maxine Fitzpatrick. She wrote a piece for me about a year ago. The commentary, it said, black folks know the solution to their problem. White folks ain't listening. And you said it's the power of throne. You making decisions about everything, and we tell you, here's what we need, but you have no concept. You got sometimes no understanding or don't want to have it, so you don't know. And then you bring in people that want to, instead of talking to the one that challenge you to think, they bring in the brothers and sisters, the squad and docile, from way from the bottom up to a manager. Now they want their input. I had an incident what happened to me. So the story is this: It's economic power. We know what to do. We built, we built an Oklahoma where we had all that power of economics. So we know how to do it.
Right.
So, but you're not listening. White
Right.
folks ain't listening to the center of power. So I was say, look at that article because she got some really powerful suggestions in that. So in other words, I think it has to come down to some economic power and there has to be some resources behind it. So going back to Biden and those people, they got to put resources into to building wealth and reparation got to be a part of that. And I make no apology for that. We have built this country. We have built this country like no other people, and they everybody have profit from it except us.
That's amazing, and I completely agree with you, 100%. I think we're all ready for that change, that necessary change that we all need, and I couldn't agree more. So,
But
white people aren't listening to
it's
us.
people like you going to make that change. I can
I hope
tell.
so. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
hope
yeah,
so.
yeah, and you keep doing what you're doing right there because it is going to affect changes. And don't be afraid to say it
Well,
because
thank you.
somebody's not going to put on the raincoat. But don't worry about it.
Because I've got my umbrella and I've got the raincoat.
Some not going to put that on. Somebody else's ice water is colder than mine. I don't know if your parents ever hear him say that or not.
I've
Somebody
done.
else's ice water is colder than mine. The ice water is ice water.
Well, Bernie, I want to thank you so much for coming on talking to me today. And I'm so happy to have learned more about your work. I'm definitely going to look at all those stories that you pointed out. This has been extremely educational.
Yeah, and look at some of our Black History edition. We're very proud of them too.
Yes.
Every one of them is up there.
Absolutely. Again, for all of you guys that are watching, you can catch musical performances, dance exhibitions, race and justice discussions, workshops, everything to celebrate and educate on Black History Month all month long. You can visit Rainier Avenue Radio's website for a schedule of events. And until next time, bye.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. This is an